This happened back when I was in 5th grade. School ended, so we were just playing around. We got bored, and one of us made a Ouija board. We played it. The coin was moving, and I thought my friends were just playing with it. Well, the ghost's name was RORY, and a girl. We didn't finish the game since my mom is already at the gate of the school, waiting to pick me up. That night, I was alone at my room when I heard footsteps outside my door. I went outside my room to see who it was, but there's nobody. After eating dinner, I went to my room. I was shocked when I entered because the sliding windows are open and the blinds are up, and my closet is also open. The papers that are on my desk are scattered everywhere. I was so sure that the windows are closed and that my room is very neat and tidy. My imagination is just playing with my mind, so I thought it was RORY who did it. I just cleaned the mess up. That same night, I can't sleep. I would hear footsteps outside at the hallway and occasional knocking on my window, even though my room is on the 2nd floor. I thought it was the wind, even though it's summer and it's hot, and there's practically no breeze. I still managed to sleep though. I woke up to the sound of giggling of a girl. I opened my eyes and saw a girl standing at the foot of my bed. She looks like the ghost from the movie The Ring. The difference is she has a smaller hair, and her height is smaller. I shouted, but there's no voice coming out of my mouth. Then I realized I'm numb, and I can't move. I love reading horror stories, and I read in one article that moving the pinky finger of your foot will help you move. So I did. It stopped and I fell asleep. Then minutes later, it happened again. This time, it happened for like 2 minutes, and then the girl, RORY, took the pillow beside me, and she gave it to me, and then she tilted my head towards the pillow, not trying to break my leg. Then she vanished. I woke up because apparently my mom is waking me up so I can go to school. The pillow is beside me, exact position where she put it. My mom is a lifesaver. I don't know what will happen if she didn't wake me up. I had mini sleep paralysis, and the footsteps and the knocking is still there. Sometimes I can even see a girl's shadow. It's been 4 years since that happened. I don't know what happened to my friends or if they experienced the same since we don't talk about paranormal stuff, but I'm the only one that's really into it. When I was in my early teens, I had an obsessive fascination with the occult and spiritualism. Basically anything to offer some sort of proof that there is more to this reality than what we believe. This all started in the early 90s when I saw Ouija boards for sale in our local small-town grocery store. Needless to say, I bought it. I couldn't believe they actually sold these as games. Mind you, I lived in a small town and grew up disconnected from a lot of pop culture staples of that era. I would play the board often, mostly with my stepbrother, Dan, and stepsister, Holly, when they came to visit during the summer months and over the holidays. Both of them were considerably younger than myself, me being no older than 13 at the time. The board became an obsession, even though over 95% of the time, nothing would happen, or when it did move, we would receive short, nondescriptive messages. On one cold winter day, this was about to change. My siblings and I retreated upstairs in an attempt to play the board. We lit the usual candles and killed the lights. After a few attempts to summon a spirit, the planchette started to move. This time, it felt different. It glided with ease around the board and answered simple yes or no questions with great finesse. In disbelief, we took our fingers off the planchette. The moment we did so, the flame on the candle began to shrink dramatically. We quickly placed our fingers back on the planchette, and the flame immediately came back to life. We then asked, "Where in the room are you?" The pointer spelt out K-I-T-E. Well, we sat there confused for a moment, until we realized that I had a kite mounted to the ceiling above our heads. At this moment, the kite began to flutter as if there was a slight breeze. We lived in a log cabin that did not have a central air system. There were no fans running, so this was impossible and quite odd. We continued playing, and I decided to ask, "We'd like to know our spirit guide names," which is a very new agey question as I look back. So I asked, "What is my guide's name?" The board spelled out Arthur. Dan asked for the name of his guide, and the board lettered out Brett. And finally, Holly asked for hers, and the board replied Gareth. We were all kind of shocked with the results, and discontinued playing to go downstairs and to tell my mother the information we just received. After doing so, she replied, "I don't know, just look up the names in the dictionary." At the time, I thought this was pretty unhelpful advice, but reluctantly, I did. A dictionary probably is not the best resource for looking up names, but this was before the internet, so I grabbed the dictionary off the shelf and began flipping through the pages. Searching the name Brett came up with a few uninteresting results. Next, I looked up Arthur. Not surprisingly, King Arthur, along with maybe a few other Arthurs, were on the list. I then proceeded to look up Gareth. When I did so, my jaw hit the floor. Gareth was King Arthur's nephew. I was completely dumbfounded. I knew at this moment that the names we received probably weren't the fictional names or actual names of spirit guides. These were purposefully crafted by something with the full awareness that what we could or would look them up and draw a connection between the two. Now, before you go and assume my stepbrother and or sister pushed the planchet, keep this in mind. Dan has always had a learning disability. Even today, he still has difficulty spelling and uses voice to text because of it. I am 100% confident he couldn't have moved it. I am also confident that neither of them at the time were well versed in genealogy of any mythology. I have observed this with a skeptical point of view since the day it happened. This still remains as one of the few times that the board actually moved, more or less provided us with legible, specific details. To this day, at the age of 39, I remain convinced that what we received was not from us, but somewhere else. Something that I believe knew full well that my mother was going to tell me to look up. This story takes place in the year of 1993. I was a sophomore in high school. I must emphasize the importance of the year, as cell phones, internet, and the effortless forms of mass communication at your fingertips was non-existent. There are ample amounts of backstory, but mainly I cannot get into the feel of the story, as this is the only one I can safely tell you. You'll understand why as the story goes on. At this time in my life, my friends and I were very carelessly using a Ouija board that I found in my deceased great-uncle's attic right after he passed. Again, I will not go into many details here, other than it was wooden, old, and had no instruction. We took it home, and my sisters and I, along with my friends, began to play with it. Weeks went by, a few months went by, and lots of stuff was happening in my house and with my friends. Me, strongly being a believer in the paranormal, didn't question much of what was happening, as it was witnessed not just by me, but many others. I saw such occurrences change the beliefs of staunch skeptics in a matter of moments. I was terrified most of the time, sleeping with my lights always on, or never alone. At times, I was even amused by it. We'll use the term it here, as I cannot call and will not call it by its name. Then came a day in early spring of '93 that my friends and I were sitting at a round table in the library of our high school. The topic always seemed to circle back around to what was happening at my house. There were 4 of us sitting at a table: myself, Monica, Kim, and Suzanne. I was beginning to get a little agitated and began to feel arrogant. So arrogant that I said aloud to my friends almost these exact words. If you're so powerful and so real, then you wouldn't be stuck in my house. So, show us a sign you can hear us beyond there and the board. And just like that, the lights went out in the entire library and school for about 5 seconds. When they came back on, I continued my overconfident banter by laughing and saying, "Really? Is that all you have?" The bell rang shortly after, and it was time to go home. I didn't think much of the incident after, but knew my egotistical, fake act may have caused some consequences down the line. That night when I fell asleep, I had a dream. I'm not even sure I can call it that. I can't even call it a nightmare, because that word connotates fiction to me. This was one of those dreams or visions, if you may, that you wake up from and feel it. You can recite every line in detail as if you were still in it. To this day, I could still feel the resonation and remember every bit. The dream starts off in the morning, and as I begin to walk into school from the street, I am immediately plagued with the sense of terror and a sense that I was slowly being chased. There were black hooded figures, fully cloaked, no signs of human life underneath, just a human form. There were 6 of them, all with their heads down. It was broad daylight, and they were each carrying a torch. In the middle of them was a very tall figure, again, all in black with a red stripe in front of its cloak. He was not carrying a torch, but rather a long pewter staff of some sort. This is when I stopped studying the details of who this was. I knew who it was, and I knew they were after me, especially him. They were not running or in any type of haste. It was slow and methodical. I ran into school fast and frantically began to look for a hiding spot in the library, as that's where my dream put me. I quickly jumped over these bookshelves which were low to the ground, both in the dream world and in the real world, and balled up on the shelf, hiding and praying not to be found. I then woke up, breathless. I said few words as I got ready for school and onto the bus that morning. None of my friends involved in the library situation or the Ouija board stuff in general were on the same bus route, and I dare not speak a word of it to the kids I rode the bus with, as most of them I despised. When I arrived at school, finding my friends Monica and Kim waiting for me at the north entrance as they did every morning, I began to tell them the details of the dream. We had just entered the main hallway as I was finishing the dream details when running from the south entrance, which was a pretty good distance from us, was Suzanne. I do not feel I need to drive home the point that there were no cell phones and no conceivable way of Suzanne getting any of this info. This is exactly as it happened and is 100% accurate. Trying as hard as she could to catch her breath, she looked at me and said, "I have a message for you. From him." Not it, I must emphasize. Tell Nicole she can run, but she can't hide. To this day, every time I tell this story, I envision him laughing, still saying, "I found you."